Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms. And today, we're going to try to do a couple things to improve the stability of my 2038R. If you watch the channel much, you know that I live on a hill and I spend a lot of time carrying heavy loads. You add those two things together and you have a risk for a tractor rollover accident. And obviously that's the last thing we want. Now I've done a couple videos talking about ballast and how I feel like my tractor was well ballasted. I've got fluid in the rear tires, I have one set of wheel weights, and I keep a rear implement on. But then I added a tractor cab. The tractor cab weighs about 400 pounds, and that weight is up here rather than down here. Now if I'm lifting in the front, it's actually a helpful ballast having the cab on there. But if I've got weight and I'm turning on a hill or something like that, then this weight being up high moves my center of gravity and makes the tractor more likely to tip. So adding the cab is what really made me think I needed to improve my stability. I'm going to do that in two ways. First, I've got the one set of tractor weights on there now. I'm going to upgrade that to 3 sets per side and add that weight to the wheels. The second thing I'm going to do is reverse my front tires. You flip them around and then put them on the opposite side of the tractor so that your tread is still going the right way. I saw Katie Hill Farmer YouTube channel do the same thing, and he said the only negative to it was it no longer lined up properly with his mid-mount mower. Well, I hardly ever use my mid-mount mower, and so I've got the wheel weights behind and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and get the front wheels turned first. Then the second half of the video will be putting those wheel weights on. So I'm going to use the jack more like a jack stand. I'm going to lift the front tires with the loader, leave the tractor running to support that lift. Then I'm going to lift the jack up to it and put pressure on the front axle to support it. Then it'll really be pretty quick to switch the front wheels. Just pull those out, take this one to the other side, switch them, and that'll definitely be the quicker part of this. So after I was completely finished with this project, I actually found some information in the owner's manual relating to reversing these wheels, and I also want to talk about some safety concerns with this entire project that you should consider if you're going to do the same thing. So if you ever stick around to the end of one of my videos, I recommend you stick around for this one. Slight up pressure. That's all you're doing. Not side to side, just there you go. That's it. Now you're going to let go. Alright, so I forgot to measure the width of the outside of the tires before I took them off and flipped them, which is a little bit annoying, but luckily I'm in a really good Facebook group and I went on there and asked the other members if someone could measure theirs for me and came up with 51.5 inches from the outside of one front tire to the outside of the other one. I couldn't find that information online, which was surprising to me. I could find the spacing of the rear and the wheelbase, but I couldn't find the spacing on the front. I don't know if that's because it varies a half an inch, if you have different tires maybe. Regardless, I'm going to go with that 51.5 inches. And now that I've moved these, I'll show you the tape measure up close in a second. I'm getting about 57.5, which would mean I've widened my front stance by 6 inches. I tried to measure on each rim, and it looked like I was getting about 2.5 extra inches from the mounting position to the outside edge of the wheel, and then doing the same on the other side and subtracting. So I was estimating I'd gain about 5 inches, and by this measurement I'm gaining 6 inches, so somewhere in that range is what the difference is. I can tell you I did a video about a month ago while we still had snow on the ground. The title of the video was something like "Skidding Logs on a Hill, Nothing But Problems." And that's exactly what it was. I felt very unstable. It doesn't help that there was snow on the ground, and maybe some different tires would have helped with that. But I'm on a hill, there's snow, and I'm trying to get a log out. And it's one of the few times when I just said, no, it doesn't feel safe, I'm not doing it. I ended up getting half of that log out, but the other half is still sitting there. And so once I'm done with this project and I've got the wheel weights on, I'm going to go back out and record a video taking the other half of that log out. Now it's not going to be an exact comparison because there's no snow on the ground right now, but it is still sloppy and muddy. So it will make a decent comparison. But the point I'm getting at is in a situation like that, where I'm trying to lift a load and I'm on a slope, and then I want to turn really any direction, it didn't feel stable enough for me. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, I added the weight of the cab, and if it has any effect, it's going to be a negative effect on my center of gravity. So that 3 extra inches on each side, 5 or 6 total inches in the width here, is going to make a difference. I've already added the 6 inches of extra width in the back with the wheel spacers. So I've widened it as far as I can, and I've added as much weight as I can. The only thing I could still do is maybe use a ballast box that's heavier than the rear implement that I use. But I feel like I've got it as safe as I can get it to go back up on this hillside on a regular basis and try to get work done. So I ended up having problems with the hardware that was provided with the wheel weights. So this ended up being a 2-day project, and I tried to splice the project back together in a way that would make sense. Alright, so we'll start with this wheel right here. The way these work is on the wheel itself you have square holes, and you slide a bolt through and the square part catches in that square on the wheel. Then you put the wheel weight on there, put the nuts on. Then for the next one you put that through, slide it down until it fits in the square part of the wheel spacer. It looks like the difficult part of this will just be holding the wheel weight up while you put the nut on. I got my first wheel weight lifted up in place, stuck the bolt through the back the way you're supposed to, and it wasn't even close to coming through to put the nut on. And then I thought, am I doing something wrong? I put 2 of the wheel weights stacked together the way they go here and tried to put a bolt through that way. You needed a good 2 more inches. It was not as easy getting the correct bolts for these wheel weights as it should have been. From everything I can see, the bolt kit they gave me is for putting your first set of wheel weights on, and those don't require as long of a bolt. My measurement said I needed 5.5, and they didn't have any of those. And I'm guessing this is a hardened bolt, or should be a hardened bolt. And I went to a fastener store that just mainly sells nuts and bolts, They didn't have any 5.5s. They didn't have anything hardened. And so all I could get from them was 6-inch. And I don't know if it's okay to have them be too long. I don't know if that's going to affect the next one. So I got some 6-inch from there. Then I went and got some 5.5 from a hardware store. I got to go get my son out here. I think I could probably do this by myself by holding it with my knee and then trying to start the bolts. But that's a good way to smash a finger or drop it and get mad. So I'll just get someone to give me a hand and we'll get these on here. First time I was trying to do this, the holes that have the slot in them, it was pointed straight up or a little past, and it wasn't letting the bolt sit in there in the down position where it's supposed to go. I just happened to have stopped it with it rotated more, and it allows this bolt to sit where I need it, which is going to help with getting this weight on and through the bolt head. I think no matter how you do this, it's going to be awkward because there's not much room to get your hand in here, and you have to push on the back of this to hold it in place while you start the nut. But I definitely would advise to have someone help you hold the weight. But just in case you don't, I'm going to try first by myself and see if I can do it. So that felt like a success, but I'm not sure if it is or not because I don't know if I can get this bolt in with that weight on there, or if you have to have both of these sticking through first. I think you have to have both of them sticking through, but I'm going to try to wiggle this through from the back. Yep. When you lift this up, you've got to have both bolts sticking through. And one of them is going to have to be held up as you're putting the nut on. So I'm going to go ahead and get some help getting this up there. Alright, hold on. I've taken that most of the way loose. Now I'm going to see if I can wiggle it out enough. I can. So if you just barely start that, and then put the other bolt through, it can work that way. And before I try to get the nut on, I'm going to run this most of the way down. Oh, so my nut's no longer started. It is started, but it's not, the square isn't in. There we go. Alright, so if you don't have the benefit of a helper, you can get this done. I'll probably have him help me on the other ones just to make it easier. I mean, we're touching on both sides, it looks like. All right. That's not great news. It looks like I'm going to have to take this one off because the factory bolt in here is sticking out too far, or the first set of wheel weights that I had put on at the dealership, the head of that bolt, or the end of the bolt, is sticking out into the cavity where this square head needs to go. So I'm going to have to switch the bolts on that first weight to a shorter bolt. So I'm going to have to cut some of the ones I just bought down to use them as the first set. I'm worried that might have been a little bit confusing talking about the different bolt lengths. If you have no wheel weights at all, what you need for the first set, to put the first set of wheel weights on, is 3.5 inch by 1/2 inch diameter carriage bolts. If you're adding more than one set, what you need is a set of 5 inch length by 1/2 inch diameter carriage bolts for each additional set. Alright, so I've got one bolt cut off to 3.5, stuck through the back, and I've got the nut started on. Yep, that came out about flush to the end. So by doing it one at a time, I don't have to lift the weight of this first wheel weight. So I'm going to save these for the second set because they're the right length, and go cut off the other 3 now that I know my length is right on the first set. It's got the 4 holes in the back. We're in this one. So you need to find the square hole down here. You'll want to be on this side probably. Stick this through the... When you stick it through, then you have to turn it till the square pops in. Okay, just hold it there if the square's in.
No, I can't turn it. There we go. Hey, keep pushing it. There we go.
And you gotta hold pressure against it from the back.
I am.
Alright, so now I've got that first one put back on, but with shorter bolts. I can repeat the process from earlier, twice on this side, repeat that all twice on the other side. I don't think I mentioned anywhere during the course of recording this, but each of these wheel weights weighs 60 pounds. So 3 per side is 180 per side, 360 total pounds of wheel weights. So this video is already getting pretty long, and the process I just used to get that wheel weight on is the same process I used for this wheel weight and exactly the same process I used on the other side. There we go. Alright, first side's done. I'll say that the second set of wheel weights came out about flush with the outside of the tire. So if you don't want your weights sticking out past the tire, you go with 2 sets. With the third set, I'm sticking out another 3 or 4 inches past. Alright, so the job's done. I'm really excited to have the wheel weights on the back. I think I'm glad that I switched the front wheels. They're easy to switch back if I change my mind. It's definitely going to give you some stability. But this is a point where I want to talk a little bit about safety and following what you see some guy do on YouTube. You know, I'm not an expert or an authority at anything. I'm I had read my owner's manual once when I got the tractor and did not think it said anything about reversing these wheels. Turns out in the owner's manual it does say you can reverse these wheels. It gives almost the exact same measurements I did as far as the before and after width. So all that information is correct. But the other thing it mentions in the manual that's important, it says you can reverse them and use them this way, but it says using them this way with the loader can shorten the life of your front axle. And if you think about it, that makes sense. The wider axle is more stable. But the more you widen that out, the more torque it puts on your front axle components. So you're saving yourself a little bit of a rollover risk and a little bit of danger there by widening them out. But if you lift your max lift height on a regular basis with those widened out, you could damage your front axle. So that's where you always need to be careful doing something that you see me do, or I saw someone else on YouTube doing this and decided from that to go with it. But it's always important to do your research and, assess the safety of it. Another example of that is the bolts that I used back here. I told you this whole long story about how I got the bolts and what length bolts to use and all of that. And it's done, it's working, it might work forever. But those are a grade A bolt, which sounds good, right? But if you know anything about bolts, that's a soft bolt. Be better to have a grade 5 bolt or a grade 8 bolt. The guy at Heritage Tractor didn't know what grade of bolt came with the kit. But if you want to be thorough and smart about it, you'll get the exact bolts that John Deere says you should have back there. Not a version that is the same size, but may not be rated for the stress that goes on those wheel weights. Personal opinion, I think it'll be fine. But I'm actually, as I was finishing up this job and thinking through it, I'm thinking it might be smart for me to go ahead and order the correct bolts for this. They did have them, they just didn't have them listed as a wheel weight kit. They were listed as some other wheel bolt, but they were listed. So I could go ahead and order the exact bolts that come with this, take those weights back off, and put them on the right way. And I may do that, and it's something that you should consider, especially if you're just now ordering wheel weights. You might as well order the exact right hardware with it, which is 2 3.5 and 4 5-inch to do all of these wheel weights. With all that being said, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. In a minute, you'll see links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.